HOA tried to evict me from my lake cabin, didn't know I owned the land and their dock rights. The lake shimmered like molten gold under the late summer sun, but the air around my cabin was thick with hostility. I'd lived here for 3 years, ever since I inherited the place from my grandfather, who built it with his own hands. The cabin was my sanctuary, a creaky refuge of pine and memories, perched on a half-acre of land he'd bought outright in 1962. I thought I'd left the world's noise behind until the Karen Lake HOA decided I was their problem. It started with a letter, slipped under my door like a coward's threat. Notice of violation, it read, accusing me of unauthorized residency and demanding I vacate by month's end. The HOA, led by Margaret Hensley, a woman with a smile as sharp as a switchblade, claimed my cabin violated their community standards. I laughed at first. My land wasn't part of their gated enclave of cookie-cutter mansions. But the letters kept coming, each more aggressive, until Margaret herself showed up with a clipboard and a smug ultimatum. "You're squatting," she declared that August afternoon, her heels sinking into the gravel outside my cabin. "This land is under HOA jurisdiction. Pack up, or we'll have you removed." Her voice dripped with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Behind her stood Tom, my quiet neighbor, who mowed his lawn every Sunday and never met my eyes. He shifted uncomfortably, holding a stack of HOA pamphlets like a shield. "Margaret," I said, clutching the deed I'd dug out of Grandpa's old safe. "This land's mine, free and clear. You've got no claim here." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't back down. She pointed to the dock stretching into the locky rickety thing I'd repaired last spring. "That dock is on HOA property," she snapped. "You're trespassing." The dock, that was their angle. The HOA had built a community dock years ago, and they assumed it gave them control over the lakefront. What they didn't know, what I hadn't known until I scoured Grandpa's papers, was that he'd never signed over the dock rights. In fact, the HOA's entire waterfront access depended on an easement through my land. I held that card close, waiting for the right moment. The confrontation escalated over weeks. Margaret rallied the HOA, painting me as a rogue outsider threatening their pristine community. They sent cease and desist letters, hired a lawyer who looked like he charged by the sneer, and even tried cutting off my utilities. Tom, the neighbor, started leaving apologetic notes in my mailbox, saying he had to side with the community. I felt the walls closing in, but I wasn't leaving. This was my home. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. One evening, as I pored over legal documents by lamplight, a knock startled me. It was Ellie, Tom's teenage daughter, her face pale and her hands trembling. "They're lying," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "My dad found something in the HOA records. They know you own the land. Margaret's been hiding it." Ellie slipped me a crumpled photocopy of a 1990 survey confirming my grandfather's ownership, buried in the HOA's own files. Tom had found it but was too scared to act. Ellie wasn't. Armed with this, I called a community meeting. The HOA clubhouse was a sterile box of glass and chrome, packed with residents who eyed me like I was a criminal. Margaret stood at the podium, her voice syrupy with false concern. "This woman's presence devalues our community," she said, gesturing at me. "We must protect our standards." I stood, heart pounding, and held up the survey. "You knew," I said, my voice steady despite the fire in my chest. "You knew this land is mine, and you knew your dock, your precious community dock, exists because of an easement through my property. One I can revoke." Gasps rippled through the room. Margaret's face drained of color. Tom looked at the floor, his hands clenched. The room erupted. Neighbors shouted, some at me, some at Margaret. I laid out the truth. The HOA had no legal claim to my cabin, and their dock rights hung by a thread. I could have ended it there, revoked the easement, and left them landlocked. Part of me wanted to let them choke on their own arrogance. But as I looked at Ellie, her eyes wide with hope, I saw my grandfather's values staring back. He'd always said this lake belonged to everyone who loved it, not just those with the loudest voices. So I offered a deal. I'd keep the easement open, but only if the HOA dropped their campaign against me and rewrote their bylaws to prevent this kind of overreach. Margaret sputtered, but the residents, smelling her deception, turned on her. By the meeting's end, she'd resigned, and the HOA agreed to my terms. I should have felt triumphant, but the victory was bitter. The community I'd hoped to join was fractured, not by me, but by their own mistrust. Tom apologized, his voice heavy with shame, and Ellie hugged me before they left. I kept the cabin, the dock stayed open, but the lake didn't feel the same. Every ripple carried the weight of what I'd lost, a sense of belonging I'd never quite had. As I sit on my porch now, watching the water lap at the shore, I wonder if I did the right thing. I saved my home, but at what cost? The HOA's greed exposed a deeper truth. Community can be a fragile thing, torn apart by power and pride. I kept the land, but the scars of that fight linger in every neighbor's averted glance. What do you think? Did I fight for justice, or did I just deepen the divide? Share your thoughts on where the line between right and wrong lies in a community like this.